Tonight, slow down. The Scottish Government wants to cut the speed limits from 60 to 50 miles per hour on A roads across the country.
The government says it wants to make our roads the safest in the world, and ministers say this will help cut road deaths. But what do drivers and pedestrians think?
Regardless of them bringing it down or not, there's still going to be people that speed.
That'd be absolutely fine. Maybe save some people getting knocked down in crashes.
Also making the headlines, Scotland's housing emergency and how rocketing rent is forcing tenants out. One woman tells STV News her rent is set to double from £600 to £1,200 a month.
Tonight's sport comes from Celtic Park, where Celtic face Belgian side Club Brugge in the Champions League.
And some magnificent men and their flying machine. Meet the aviation enthusiasts taking to the skies in their homemade aeroplane. I'm John Mackay. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. The Scottish Government is considering reducing the national speed limit on country roads by 10 miles per hour. The Transport Secretary announced a public consultation this morning. The proposals would see the current limit of 60 miles per hour on single carriageway roads drop to 50. However, the current 40 limit for HGVs would also be upped to 50, in line with England and Wales. Ministers say they're trying to make Scotland's roads the safest in the world by the end of the decade. Our reporter, Fraser Nicholl, joins us now. So, Fraser, what's this about?
Well, especially at this time of year, John, it's country roads that can be the most treacherous with icier conditions and lower visibility. Many drivers actually choose to drive slower anyway, but the Scottish Government announced this morning it's now actively considering reducing the national speed limit on single carriageway roads like this one from 60 miles per hour to 50 miles per hour. And they've been quite unapologetic about all of this, saying it's about saving lives on Scotland's roads. In rural Ayrshire, most roads around here are 60 miles per hour. And on Scotland's country roads, collisions are more common, people's injuries more serious, and accidents more deadly. But would a lower speed limit help improve road safety?
Yeah, kind of agree with it, especially with the amount of accidents happening right now. There's been a few around here.
Sometimes you're in a rush and that, and then the roads are like clear. Usually in these roads, so.
Driving for 50 odd years and the driving is getting worse.
I feel like a lot of people don't really pay attention to the speed limit. So the bottom line is, regardless of them bringing it down or not, there's still going to be people that speed.
That'd be absolutely fine. Maybe save some people getting knocked down in crashes.
The Scottish Government's consultation is asking the public for their views. It's proposing reducing the 60 limit on country roads to 50 for cars, but also increasing the legal limit for HGVs from 40 to 50 on single carriageways and 50 to 60 on dual carriageways, something hauliers have long been calling for.
It's been 10 years since this move was made in England and Wales, and so there's plenty of data for the government to look at for their modelling, but basically companies in Scotland have been at competitive disadvantage for 10 years now.
The Transport Secretary says reducing the limit for cars would make Scotland's roads safer, but opposition parties say this could be achieved by improving infrastructure.
I think it's just crazy trying to reduce the speed limits on our single track roads down to 50 miles an hour. It already takes motorists a long time to get around some of our rural areas, and this is just going to make it far worse.
This is evidence-based. We're not the only country that's looking at this. Ireland's conducting a similar review as well, and we know that the real concerns are single carriageways, and that's where we want to make the difference. So sometimes you have to do challenging things to make a difference, but if the difference is saving people's lives, I hope the public can respond positively to these moves.
155 people died on Scotland's roads last year, and suggestions are that's risen this year. The Scottish Government say these proposals would help make Scotland the safest place to drive by 2030. It's another matter whether everyone is on board with that direction of travel.
And Fraser, work already underway to cut speeds in towns and cities.
Yeah, this comes on top of plans to reduce the speed limit in more built-up areas from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour by the end of next year. That's now with local councils to put in place. And although this consultation is separate, it's all part of the same drive from the Scottish Government to halve the number of road deaths by 2030 and to halve the number of people seriously injured on Scotland's roads by 2030. The Transport Secretary telling me this morning that this move around the 50 mile per hour limit alone could save 18 lives per year. She's now actively encouraging people to take part in the public consultation. It's now live until March.
Fraser, thank you. Surviving, not thriving. The words of a renter in Glasgow whose landlord proposed doubling their monthly rent from £600 to £1,200. It comes as the latest Scottish Government figures show the cost of renting in Scotland has risen beyond the average rate of inflation. The Government will vote on the housing bill proposals in Holyrood tomorrow, but one long-term renter says the market is forcing their decision to leave the country. Vanessa Taff reports.
Ursula has made this house a home for 7 years. After a visit from her landlord, her future in this property now looks uncertain.
I received an email stating he wants to double up the rent, going from 600 to 1,200. Given that we have a conversation, he knew I'm in no position to pay that and I will have to move. He actually hinted himself that if I need any help moving, they are happy to help.
The huge proposed increase has cemented her decision to leave the country after living here for 20 years.
I've been not thriving, I've been just surviving. It used to be a perk of Glasgow, cheap rents, but at the moment the perks are not really there anymore. It's becoming ridiculously expensive. To be honest, I have decided, based on everything that's been happening, to move out of the UK within the next year or two.
And Ursula is not the only one to see her rent skyrocket within the last 12 months. On average, renting a two-bed property from a private landlord will cost at least £893 a month. Lothian had the highest average monthly rent for a two-bed, costing £1,358. A four-bed place has gone up by more than 8%, costing at least £1,793. Average rents across the whole of Scotland have, at the very least, doubled in comparison to the rate of inflation since 2010. Tomorrow, the Scottish Government will vote on proposals like rent controls and homeless prevention measures as part of the housing bill. It's hoped that these plans could help stem the rising costs.
We often see landlords evicting tenants on legal grounds, such as wanting to sell up or move into the property, and they often don't do that, so they'll get the tenant out in order to hike the rents, sometimes as high as 50 or 60%, and then they'll be back on the market within the next week or so.
The Scottish Government say the housing bill will place a stronger emphasis on homelessness prevention and that they're investing nearly £600 million in affordable homes.
The Scottish Government haven't listened. They have not listened about the dangers in relation to rent controls that's going to drive away investment, meaning less houses for people to actually live in. So in the round, the bill should have been withdrawn, rewritten and therefore resubmitted.
For now, renters like Ursula face making life-changing decisions based on the state of the country's housing market. Vanessa Taff, STV News.
The Scottish Government will set out plans to help pensioners with winter fuel bills tomorrow. The UK Government's budget scrapped the winter fuel payment for millions of pensioners. But speaking in Edinburgh a week ahead of the Scottish budget vote, the First Minister called on opposition parties to work with him to advance the prospects of the people of Scotland. Our political editor Colin Mackay was there. So Colin, what's it going to do for pensioners?
Well, after First Minister's questions tomorrow, the Social Justice Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville will make a statement to Parliament about supporting older people with increasing energy costs. Since the UK Government scrapped the universal benefit for pensioners, the winter fuel payment, this year to close the £22 billion budget gap that they had, Labour has seen a significant political backlash to the extent that Scottish Labour leader Anas Sarwar has said that he would fix it in Scotland if he was to win the 2026 Scottish Parliament election. But today, John Swinney was setting out his style as First Minister, what he described as the approach of a Swinney government, and on this he made it clear that he's ready to do it now for all pensioners in Scotland this year, this winter. Can you confirm that you are going to help older people with their fuel bills over the course of this winter? You said it's going to be a long, dark winter. It's already a cold winter.
This is an issue that has attracted real concern from people around the country. I think it was an unnecessary move that was made. I cannot fathom the logic behind the move that was made by the United Kingdom government, but it involved a reduction in our budget to which we've had to take time to respond. But what I'm certain of is that the government I lead must be a government that stands and offers support to those who face challenges in our society.
And Colin, what did he have to say about the budget?
Well, John Swinney leads a minority government. He needs the help of at least one other party to get his budget proposals through. In the past, the SNP have mostly relied on the Greens, occasionally the Liberal Democrats, but his message today was that all the parties in the Parliament had to collaborate to get the budget through. But just to be clear, if he can't get his budget through, not only is he looking at an emergency election, but Scotland's spending plans for next year revert to this year's spending plans. So there would be no increase in public spending, no public sector pay rises. Now, one thing he did say today was that there's now an occupant in Bute House who's kind of experienced in managing the public finances. That was maybe a bit of a dig at his predecessor, but whatever it was, he's got a week to prove it, a week to deliver a deal.
Colin, at the Scottish Parliament, thank you. Police say an explosion last month at a block of flats in Alloa was not suspicious. 50-year-old Graham Green was killed and 3 other people were injured in the blast in Kelly Place on October the 6th. The gas distribution firm SG previously ruled out their network as the cause. An investigation by the Procurator Fiscal is still ongoing. A motorcycle gang member who planted a pipe bomb under a rival's father's van has been jailed for 9 years. Daniel Leponder targeted David Rollo Sr.'s work van in Lennoxton in June. Judge Lord Arthurson told Leponder the offences were somewhat bizarre, stemming from a feud between the Blue Angels and the Mad Dogs. From next year, the reading list for pupils studying English at higher and Nat 5 level will look a little different. For the first time in 8 years, the SQA has updated the Scottish set texts to include a range of books, plays and poems which it believes more fully reflect life in Scotland. The list still includes classic works, but will also give the choice of new contemporary titles. Ollie Dickinson has been finding out what students and teachers think.
I only says it to him because see my wee sister, she had bad feet when she was away.
Duck Feet follows the trials and tribulations of high school and uses humour to tackle hard-hitting subjects. The novel, which is written in Scots, is one of the new additions to the National 5 English set texts list.
When I took the shoes off my sister that night, her feet were red raw.
Kids in schools are going to be reading my work. It's amazing. The book covers a whole lot of things like bullying and drug addiction and alcoholism and sitting your exams and sexuality.
Then Chris Rice from our Edu class shouted at me, "Hey, how do you not get a pair of duck feet to go with your wings?"
When I was at school, I was actually really quite lucky in section, and I remember somebody in our class being allowed to do train spotting, and that was a scandal, because there was other folk had been told that I knew for different schools couldn't do that book. When I was at school as well, we did Rona Munro's Bold Girls, and I absolutely loved this book. And then one of my friends is an English teacher, and she said, they're still doing that book, and I was like, well, I think it still stands up. It's a great book, but you need new blood. You need new people.
Homework for this group currently includes poems by Norman McCaig and Carol Ann Duffy. As part of their English courses, pupils must study at least one Scottish text. The list was last updated in 2018, and for the first time, learners had a say on what should be included.
I like it when I'm getting told a secret or something. I like it when it's creatively written, not just a boring text or something.
It might make others relate to it more and feel a bit more comfortable and happier reading it compared to if they're I'm not interested in this.
Text I did last year, I did Lord of the Flies, and I really liked it, so I felt it was a lot easier for me to write about it in my critical essay because I actually enjoyed the book.
The SQA say the feedback during the review from teachers, lecturers and learners was clear. Alongside classic and popular work, they also wanted a range of modern and diverse voices.
A lot of the texts that were there before are still there, and the classic texts are still there. But I think we've created a new, broader, diverse list that I think excites our guys and hopefully will excite teachers and learners.
The challenge will be, will they feel comfortable sort of analysing and quoting the stuff? Will it provide them a good platform for success in their qualifications? Because this is something they're quite concerned about. I think so long as there's rich themes, rich use of language, opportunities to explore, you know, connotations and ideas and stuff like that, I think so long as there's that on the list, then we're in a really good place.
The first assessments from the new list will take place in 2026. Ollie Dickinson, STV News.
Could you help solve a 17-year-long mystery around the theft of some of Scotland's oldest coins in return for £50,000? Crime Stoppers is offering the reward in a new appeal after an anonymous donation to the cause. They're looking for information about the unsolved 2007 theft of 1,000 coins that date back as far as the 12th and 13th centuries.
These are small, early medieval Scottish pennies made of silver. The earliest coins date to the reign of David I of Scotland. The fact that these coins are missing is a genuine tragedy for the whole of Scotland.
These coins are very rare, and thanks to the donation of an anonymous donor, we can reward £50,000 for information that comes to our charity for the arrest and conviction of anyone that was responsible for these coins.
Time now for the sport, and Rahman is at Celtic Park ahead of tonight's Champions League game.
STV Sport, sponsored by the C.R. Smith Black Friday event.
A very good evening from Celtic Park, where tonight Celtic face Club Brugge on match day 5 in the Champions League. Brendan Rodgers' side have made a very good start to this season's competition. They've secured 7 points from their first 4 games, and a win against the Belgian champions tonight would all but secure their place in the playoff round of this competition, with 3 league phase games to play. Let's hear from manager Brendan Rodgers.
I think the world probably thinks that, okay, you play really hard games against Antalata and Red Bull Leipzig, and then everything else is fine. But it's the Champions League. Every game is a very, very tough game, and this game will be another big examination for us. I think we played 19 games this season, won 16, drew 2 and lost 1 to a Champions League finalist. So that tells me that the mentality in the team is there, the spirit in the team is there, the grit in the team is there, and that we'll never quit in a game. So that always gives you confidence as a manager that you're going to go into to these games and perform.
Well, Brendan Rodgers wants his players to tap into the Celtic Park atmosphere. This place will be rocking tonight. It always is on a European night here at Celtic Park. Celtic face a Club Brugge side which defeated Aston Villa 1-0 in their last Champions League game. We spoke to some Celtic supporters ahead of kick-off.
Confident, very confident. Playing very well in Europe, playing very well at home. Happy out, can't go wrong. Anybody coming to Celtic Park knows that. It's been said for years, but they're finally fortifying it now and showing what we're capable of.
It's fantastic under Brendan again now, really turning on the magic. I think we can get a result here tonight.
Draw's not a disaster, but we're looking for the 3 points. It takes us to 10. You know, we should get through at that, or playoffs anyway, you know.
There was probably that bit of doubt in people's mind that Celtic couldn't do it. But now they've proved it. You know, they've proved that they deserve to be where they are.
Well, Celtic fans left here very happy after their last Champions League match. That was when their side defeated RB Leipzig 3-1 earlier this month. How they would settle for a similar scoreline and performance tonight against Club Brugge. Kick-off here is at 8 o'clock. OK, let's give you some news from Rangers now, and Philippe Clement has welcomed the appointment of the club's new chief executive, Patrick Stewart. The club flew out to France earlier for tomorrow night's Europa League match against Nice. There are the players there at the airport. While Clermont's side have struggled domestically, they performed well in Europe. Rangers have defeated Malmo, Steaua Bucharest, while drawing away to Olympiacos in this season's competition. News from Hearts, and they have appointed former Scotland women's head coach Shelley Kerr as the club's first technical development manager. Kerr will directly work on developing male players, focusing on the transition from academy and B team level to the first team. Well, the Hearts squad trained in the capital earlier before travelling to Belgium for their Conference League match against Cercle Bruges tomorrow night. Now to last night's Premiership game at Easter Road, and what a dramatic match it was. And David Gray, the Hibernian head coach, has praised his players' character after Rocky Bashiri's last gasp equaliser. 3 goals were scored in added time in the second half in the 3-3 draw. Lewis Meekie was there.
Hibernian have been on the wrong ends of a number of late goals this season, but this time Rocky Bashiri ensured they had the last word in a dramatic ending at Easter Road. David Gray needed a response from the home team after a 4-1 loss to Dundee at the weekend. His side were on top for most of the first half and took a deserved lead into the break with this deflected strike from captain Joe Newell. It could have been even better for Newell just minutes into the second period. The post denying the midfielder a brace. But Aberdeen manager Jimmy Talline's changes to introduce Leighton Clarkson and Shayden Morris paid dividends for the visitors, Jamie McGrath forcing in an equaliser. Hibs again came close moments later. This time Ellie Yuan struck the post. Gray brought Jordan Smith in to replace Joseph Bursic in goal after an error from the Czech on Saturday. But Smith didn't cover himself in glory as he palmed the ball into the path of Nicky Devlin, the right back applying the lob to give the Dons the lead. Hibs kept chipping away though, again striking the post. And then 2 minutes into stoppage time, the fireworks really began. Nicky Cadden making it 2-2 with this free kick. It all seemed like an all too familiar story for Hibs this season. 95 minutes gone, looking like they'd rescued a point, and Esther Sockler pulls this out of the bag to send the away support wild. But just as it seemed like the chaos was over and done, Rocky Bashiri, the hero. Despite the draw, Hibs remain bottom of the table. Aberdeen now 2 points behind Celtic at the summit, having played a game more than the champions. Lewis Mickey, STV Sport.
Now, after Kilmarnock received their 6th red card of the season at the weekend, Derek McInnes says he'll consider substituting players who've been booked in the first half, as he believes the bar for yellow cards is too low. Liam Donnelly received a 2nd yellow towards the end of their defeat to St Johnstone on Saturday. McInnes also reckons players are being punished dependent on who the referee is rather than the foul committed.
If we get yellow cards for players, particularly in the first half of games, then I probably do need to think about taking players off, which hasn't been the case before. I've been managing 17 years now, but I do think it is a bit different. I would be apoplectic with Liam Donnelly if he doesn't make a challenger. He's a midfielder, you know, I'd be going off my head if he doesn't go and make a tackle.
STV Sport, sponsored by the C.R. Smith Black Friday event.
And that, folks, is all of your sport from Celtic Park, where I can tell it's absolutely Baltic. John, you always get the lucky jobs.
I do. Nice wee warm drink with it as well. So you carry on, Rama. Cheers. Sean, how's the weather?
An icy start to the day will give way to a series of oohs and ahs. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
A very good evening to you. We're back to the cold and settled weather, and Beijing's going to be a very cold one to come tonight. Over the next couple of days, though, we see much milder air arriving once again for the weekend, but we don't need to worry this time about that transition that we had last weekend when we had all that snow coming in. This one will be much cleaner, mostly just rain, maybe a wee bit of snow over high ground for a time, but mostly rain, a lot milder, and as I say, it is a bit of a rinse and repeat just now. We've got the cold, settled weather during the weeks. At the weekends, we've got the milder weather. You can guess what's going to happen as we go into next week. It's going to turn colder once again. But as I say, tonight it is going to be an extremely cold night. South Lanarkshire probably get temperatures tonight down to about -6 or -7, parts of Stirlingshire as well. So a very cold, frosty night to come. Frosty start to tomorrow. And we will start to see cloudier skies coming in tomorrow. Also look at the numbers in the wind arrows around the Hebrides, the west coast, starting to turn quite windy here by the end of the day, and rain coming in as well. And look at our temperatures, likes of Col and Tiree, Jura, Isla. Temperatures going to be about 9 degrees by the end of the afternoon. For most of us though, still 2 or 3. A lot of dry and bright weather, but increasingly cloudy through the afternoon. But at least through the daylight hours, most of us still remain dry. On Friday, I expect probably around the likes of Glasgow and North Lanarkshire, and also on Saturday, we'll see drier and brighter weather, risk of some showers. Some more shower outbreaks of rain across Ayrshire, and particularly damp at times across the Highlands and Argyll and Bute. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
And finally, perhaps not the way most of us envision our retirement, but a group of plucky pensioners from East Lothian have made history by building and now flying the world's only fully working replica of a Sopwith 1.5 strutter aircraft. No, me neither. It's taken 24 years to get the First World War plane into the air, as Laura Alderman reports.
A remarkable project spanning almost a quarter of a century is finally off the ground. Quite literally, taking to the skies for the first time this replica of a Sopwith 1.5 strutter, an iconic First World War plane, is affectionately known as Sophie. Her first flight fulfills the dreams of those who built her from scratch. This group of retirees from East Lothian, the Aviation Preservation Society of Scotland.
We come from all different walks of life and we bring lots of different skills. The RAF have been very kind in letting us use the airfield. It was extremely anxious but excited, knowing that it was going to fly for the first time. Everything had been checked, double checked. We were very confident that she would fly straight and level, and she did.
Must have been quite an emotional moment.
Well, we're a bunch of old guys, so we cracked a smile and shook hands.
Sophie was moved from her home in East Fortune to this base in Kirknewton last year in preparation for her first flight.
Sophie was being very, very, very good. It was very nice to fly, actually. I talk about 20 men in a shed. Sadly, we've only got 2 left from the original 20, because they were all retirees when they started. I wasn't, I was still working. So I've seen it through. I'm very glad to see that they've done a fantastic job. I think better than what the factory used to build them.
The Sopwith 1.5 strutter came into service in 1916, and in Scotland it became useful as a reconnaissance plane to protect the Forth coastline. It's now brought this group of aviation enthusiasts together and fostered friendships.
I look upon it as a lunch club with benefits, and I remember the first time we saw it outside, fully built. It was awe-inspiring, and you think, my goodness, we actually built that thing.
I was here before it was even thought about. I took early retirement and I did things like, I built my own boat. And I thought, and when I built my own house. And then, so when an aeroplane came up, it was a natural progression. It was in my DNA, I think, to keep on building things.
Today, Sophie is being wheeled out and revved up for us. And let me tell you, she's a powerful machine. The Society's members will all get a seat in the cockpit and their own flight.
So what's next for Sophie? Well, there's been interest from airshow organisers all over the country, so she could be going on tour. But in the meantime, keep your eyes peeled as you're more likely to see her flying over the skies of Fife and the Lothians. Laura Alderman, STV News, Kirknewton.
What a great project. Apparently some watching through skyboxes missed the beginning of the programme. Thanks for staying with us. From all of us, thank you for watching. Goodbye.